Dear viewers, welcome to Deloar Live with the July housing market update. This is your host Deloar Khan, Realtor with Exit Family Realty. You are watching today's show from West Babylon, New York studio, and it's streaming on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. Today I have with me Cynthia Manzanares. Cynthia
Hello,
Manzanares is a realtor from Exit Family Realty for a Spanish version. Thank you, Cynthia, for joining with me.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I want to start today's show actually with an employment report. So, because last month we discussed about the employment and we saw that a lot of changes happens in the employment and a lot of progress happens on employment. So, from this chart, what we can see now, the consensus was for just over 3 million jobs to be added in June, and 4.8 million jobs were actually added. Almost 50% more jobs coming back to the market after we saw the months prior to losing the jobs. So last month we gained jobs, but coming into this month, gaining 4.8 million jobs, more than we have gained in the history of unemployment reports in the USA.
Vamos a comenzar con este informe mensual de mercadeo hablando del informe de desempleo. Si pueden ver aquí en mi pantalla, comenzaremos a hablar sobre eso. El consenso fue para un poco más de 3 millones de puestos laborales que se agregaron en junio, pero se han agregado 4.8 millones. El mes pasado ganamos empleos, pero este mes ganamos 4.8 millones de empleo, más de lo que hemos ganado en la historia de los informes de desempleo. Y esos provienen de varias áreas diferentes.
Okay, so this slide, what you can see, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported we ended up in June with 11.1% unemployment. The story really here is that unemployment went up in March and April and has come down in May and June. Certainly, we want to see that trend going up and continue in unemployment. More and more people are going back to work as they can go back safely and get back to the work that they do, as we see that already. As we break down this 11.1% unemployment, and it's important to remember that as 11.1% of the people are unemployment, and it still means 88.9, almost 89% of this out there are employed. So that is a very good news. It means 9 out of 10 almost that have a job can transact and do the things.
Como lo informó la Oficina de Estadísticas Laborales, terminamos en junio con un desempleo de 11.1%. La verdadera historia es que el desempleo aumentó en marzo y abril y disminuyó en mayo y junio. Cada vez más personas regresan al trabajo, ya que pueden regresar de manera segura. A medida que desglosamos ese desempleo del 11.1%, es importante recordar que el hecho de que el 11.1% de las personas estén desempleadas significa que el 89%, casi el 89% de las personas están empleadas.
Okay, so from Wall Street Journal report, if you see this slide, Wall Street Journal reporting that probably the best when they say US job growth surge last month, underscoring the economy's capacity for a quick rebound. If businesses continue to reopen, consumers regain confidence. And they go on to say again, a recent coronavirus spike, however, could undermine the trends captured in the latest job reports. As we see that the other states in the California and the western states and some Florida, and there are some spike we see that. So we have to watch that actually. So what we are seeing, the economy come back with this quick rebound that they talk about in the Wall Street Journal. As businesses continue to safely reopen, consumers regain confidence in getting back out and doing things that they are used to doing. But we have to watch how the business reopens, as we see some of the states are still considering reopening delay, and already the news came in today.
El crecimiento laboral en los Estados Unidos escaló el mes pasado, subrayando la capacidad económica para un rápido repunte si las empresas continúan reabriendo y los consumidores recuperan la confianza. Sin embargo, un aumento reciente del coronavirus podría socavar las tendencias capturadas en el último informe laboral.
Okay, so from this slide, what you see, we can start look at this. It brings up a lot of questions now. How is unemployment going to affect the overall economy? That is the questions. How it's going to affect our business? It brings a lot of questions. Then we are about to see wave of foreclosures. Now we have covered a lot of this, and we have talked about how we see the foreclosures playing out and how this is different from 2008. But Black Knight brings some very information here that they tell us all of the active forbearance, meaning those that have paused their mortgage payments due to financial hardship, unemployment, things like that. So all of the active forbearance which are past due on their mortgage payment, 77% have at least 20% of their home.
De todas las indulgencias activas que están atrasadas en sus pagos hipotecarios, 77% tienen por lo menos un 20% de plusvalía. Fue lo que nos dijo Black Knight. Es decir, aquellos que han pausado sus pagos de hipoteca debido a las dificultades financieras y desempleo. Cosas así. Entonces, de todas las opciones de alivio activas que se tratan de personas que están tarde en el pago de hipoteca, el 77% tiene al menos un 20% de plusvalía en su hogar. Si observas esa gráfica, puedes ver que el 90% tiene al menos un 10% de plusvalía en su hogar. ¿Qué significa esto? Resumiendo, en el informe que el alto nivel de plusvalía de hoy ofrece opciones para propietarios, legisladores e inversionistas.
So if you see the Black Knight report summarized in the report, that the high level of equity today provides options for homeowners, policymakers, mortgage investors, and servicers in helping to avoid downstream foreclosure activity and default-related losses. So this question of how is unemployment going to affect the housing market is a big question right now. We know that forbearance was enacted to help people survive in this economic storm, but yet it is causing people to say, okay, could we see foreclosures coming to the market with the number of people that don't have a job? We have to watch that very closely. So when you look at the Black Knight information, I want to talk about that for just a minute. So looking at the number of the people we have significant equity, think about it. If you had a $400,000, for an example, if you have a $400,000 home and you were in a situation where you could not make the payment and you had 20% of equity in that home, that is $80,000. You would go out and sell that home before you would allow to go into foreclosure. That's interesting, right? So I think applying that common sense to that question is what we have to do today and back it up by this data.
El alto nivel de plusvalía ofrece opciones a los propietarios de viviendas. los legisladores, los inversionistas hipotecarios y los administradores de viviendas para ayudar a evitar la actividad de ejecuciones hipotecarias posterior y la pérdida relacionada con el incumplimiento. Miremos según la información de Black Knight, y hablando al respecto tan solo un minuto, mirando el número de personas que tienen una plusvalía significativa. Por ejemplo, si tuviese una casa de $400,000 y estuviera en una situación en la que no puede hacer el pago y tuviera el 20% de capital en esa casa, esos $80,000 saldaría y vendería esa casa antes de permitir que entrara en ejecución hipotecaria. Creo aplicar el sentido común a esa ecuación en lo que tenemos que hacer hoy y respaldarlo con los datos.
So from this slide, what we see that but unemployment story we are going to continue to watch. A lot of questions coming out of that, but seeing the overall unemployment rate come down, but the core unemployment rate ticks up just slightly. So this is very interesting. It causes concern and fear in the minds of the people that we serve. I want to go here really quickly from a lending tree that says 87% of home sellers are concerned their homes won't sell because of the pandemic and resulting economic recession. That's a big number. A lot of home sellers saying, I am concerned about what's going on out there and afraid that my home won't sell. And yet 372,000 homes were sold in the US last month. So what does it mean? It means, yes, we have a fear, but what we see over here, same time, is a huge amount of buyers out there and homes are selling actually.
87% de los vendedores de casas están preocupados de que su casa no se venderá debido a la pandemia y la recesión económica resultante. Este es un número grande. Muchos vendedores de casas dicen, me preocupa lo que está sucediendo y tengo miedo de que mi casa no se venda. Y sin embargo, 372,000 casas se vendieron en los Estados Unidos el mes pasado. Necesitamos difundir esta información y poder comunicar que la cantidad de personas que buscan viviendas y la compra hoy en día sigue siendo extremadamente grande.
And as we see, Mark Fleming is saying, as we navigate the unprecedented impact of COVID-19, home has taken on added significance, and there are signs that homeownership remains one of the main tenets of the American dream.
Mark Fleming dice que a medida que navegamos por el impacto sin precedente de COVID-19, el hogar ha adquirido un significado adicional y hay señales de que la propiedad de la vivienda siga siendo uno de los inquilinos principales del sueño americano.
So even if you see the showing time, so what is happening over here from this graph, we can see that even we look at the showing times, people continue to get back out there and look at homes. As I said earlier, we see a tremendous buyer traffic, whether in person or virtually, depending on where we at. As we saw, this spikes up in the months. People are saying, hey, we want to go out there and we want to look for a home. Actually, what is happening is still we have, like, if you think about the New York, what is happening over here, we have some restriction, but still we can show now with maintaining all the CDC rules. But people like to see the house in person. So showing them virtually and in person is, we can see a greater spike.
Las veces que se muestran las casas en Norteamérica ha crecido. Año tras año, la cantidad de visitas de compradores ha crecido en un 21.4% a nivel nacional y puede ver en cada una de las regiones donde vemos crecimiento en las visitas a propiedades.
So what we see over here, as we go further on this showing time shares, year over year, the change in the buyer or viewers appointment has grown tremendously by 21.4% nationally. And you can see across each one of the region, we see the growth in showing.
Cambio año tras año en las muestras virtuales en persona combinadas a los compradores. La Asociación Nacional de Realtors también presentó un nuevo estudio que realmente analiza varias cosas diferentes para responder. ¿Cómo se ve el mercado de bienes raíces en relación con la recuperación? Y así desglosan 4 cosas importantes.
National Association of Realtors, NAR, came out with a new study, as well as they really looked at the several different things to say, how does the housing market look relative to recovery? And so they break down 4 things: demand, supply, price, and time on the market, and have added to that a factor to create a baseline and saying, how are we doing overall to the recovery? And you can see as we bottomed out in March, then started to come back there in late April and May, and not getting quite back up to the baseline of 100, but headed in that right direction in an overall housing market recovery.
El índice de la recuperación del mercado de la vivienda combina 4 componentes y son la demanda, la oferta, el precio y tiempo en el mercado. Y han agregado a eso un factor para crear una línea de base y decir cómo nos está yendo en general para llegar a una recuperación. Y se puede ver que tocamos fondo en marzo y luego comenzamos a recuperarnos a fines de abril y mayo, sin llegar a esa línea de base de 100, pero se dirigió en esa dirección correcta en una recuperación general del mercado de bienes raíces.
So what do we see actually? We see the housing market is starting to recover. We know people are going out and look at homes. And then even we add in Zillow's information here that newly pending sales are up 18.8% month over month. And listing taken are up 5.2% month over month. But there is the interesting thing. Total listing are down year over year, a little over 20%. And new listing are taken 16.6% year over year. So there is activity coming back in the market actually. So there just is not an available inventory in the market for those that want to buy. I think this graph does a good job of summarizing that. It's a year-over-year change in listing, and we can see the new listing continue to grow, total listings are decreasing, meaning as soon as they come in the market, they're being purchased. So we have a lot of buyers' demands and less inventory.
Vemos que el mercado de bienes raíces comienza a recuperarse. Sabemos que la gente está saliendo y mirando casas. Y luego, incluso mientras agregamos la información de Zillow, las ventas pendientes recientemente aumentaron 18.8% mes tras mes y las casas puestas en venta aumentaron 5.2% mes tras mes. Aquí está la cuestión interesante. Las casas puestas en venta totales disminuyeron año tras año, un poco más del 20%, y las casas nuevas en el mercado han bajado un 16.6% año tras año. Entonces, como hay actividad, regresando al mercado, simplemente no existe el inventario disponible en el mercado para aquellos que desean comprar. Creo que este gráfico hace un buen trabajo al resumir eso. Las casas a la venta en el mercado totales están disminuyendo, es decir, tampoco como llegan al mercado, así mismo son compradas.
So as a sign of the demand that is in the market right now, we have talked a lot about supply and demand and how it's working in the market. But those that are coming out saying, hey, the reasons we had for moving, the reasons we had for buying a new home have not changed. They're going out and they're buying the listing and that are coming in the market. A matter of fact, listing this comes from the Zillow's report. Inventory as a percentage of the household is half long-term average. So the long-term average is 2.4%, and we sit right now 1.2%. An all-time low of the number of the listing as we compare to the number of household.
Inventario como porcentaje de los hogares es la mitad del promedio a largo plazo. Es una señal de la demanda que hay en el mercado ahora mismo. Hemos hablado mucho sobre la oferta y la demanda y cómo está funcionando en el mercado, pero los que salen diciendo, oye, las razones que tuvimos para mudarnos, las razones que tuvimos para comprar una casa nueva no han cambiado. Están saliendo y están comprando las casas que están llegando al mercado. De hecho, en cuanto a las casas puestas en venta, esto proviene del informe Z. El inventario como porcentaje de hogares es la mitad del promedio. Entonces, el promedio a largo plazo es del 2.4% y ahora nos ubicamos en el 1.2%, un mínimo histórico del número de casas en venta en comparación con el número de hogares.
So now, considering the question of the supply and demand, let's talk about that. What is going to do home price as we go forward? I think as we look at what experts are saying right now, we have a look at 6 experts here that are saying, okay, as we look forward, what's going to happen with the pricing of the home this year? You can see that here, that one is saying the home prices expectation are, as we'll see, in a slight decline there. But the 5 others say we'll see appreciation. And then if we look at the 3 of those 5 says, well, we'll see over 3% appreciation this year. Then we go into 2021 and 22, we see appreciation across both of those years. So still we have the clear indication over here that house price is going to be continually continue to appreciate if this kind of low supplies in the market and higher demand of the buyers. So we have to watch this one very carefully.
Se prevé que los precios de las viviendas continúen apreciando. Todo esto se combina en las preguntas de oferta y demanda que dicen, ¿qué va a hacer esto a los precios de la vivienda a medida que avanzamos? Creo que al mirar lo que dicen los expertos en este momento, vemos a seis expertos que dicen, bien, a medida que miramos hacia adelante, ¿qué va a pasar con el precio de las viviendas este año? Puede ver aquí que uno de los expertos dice que las expectativas de precio de la vivienda están con un ligero descenso. Los otros 5 dicen, veremos apreciación. Y luego, si miramos a 3, de esos 5 dicen, bueno, veremos más del 3% de apreciación este año. Luego, a medida que avanzamos en 2021 y 2022, vemos apreciación en ambos años.
So if you look at this, we look at the demand, and high frequency came out and said that the housing market is likely benefiting from the low mortgage rates, stronger demand for larger spaces as more and more people work from home and desire to move away from crowded cities to avoid exposures to the coronavirus. We know supply where that's all at an upward pressures. We know demand. We are benefiting from lower mortgage rates. Well, literally people can go out today and say, hey, based on where the mortgage rates are at, we can now afford a home that we could not afford before. Or we can afford more of a home and things are more important to us today that maybe were not important 3 or 4 months ago related to where we live right now. So this is very strong point that 2 factors is over here important. One is mortgage rate is very low and high demand but low supply.
High Frequency Economics dijo, es probable que el mercado de la vivienda se beneficie de las tasas hipotecarias bajas, una demanda fuerte por espacios más grandes, a medida que más y más personas trabajan desde casa y del deseo de alejarse de las ciudades concurridas para evitar la exposición al coronavirus.
So nearly what we see nearly as we look at the pricing and we look at the supply and demand across this country, we're in an undersupply situation currently right now. And then we know that demand is being surpassed by a low interest rate as we discussed earlier. But I want to talk a minute about this trend. And Realtor magazine is talked about it. And what people are saying is that important to them now in a home given the pandemic and given the last several months that we are experienced. They say this, nearly 30% of the respondents they surveyed here living in a high density urban area say that the pandemic is prompting them to want to move by the end of this year. This is more than double the rate of those living in the rural parts of the country where residents are much more likely to stay put rather than to relocate. What they're saying is that right here, people living in a denser urban areas want to get out and say, okay, we want to live in the less dense area.
Entonces, a medida que observamos los precios, observamos la oferta y la demanda en este país. Actualmente estamos en una situación de escasez de oferta y sabemos que las bajas tasas de interés están impulsando la demanda. Pero quiero hablar un minuto sobre esa tendencia. Y la Realtor Magazine habló sobre ella y publicó lo que la gente dice que es importante para ellos ahora en un hogar dada la pandemia y los últimos meses que hemos experimentado. Y la gente dice, casi el 30% de los encuestados que viven en un área urbana de alta densidad dicen que la pandemia los está impulsando a querer mudarse para fin de año. Esto es más del doble de la tasa de personas que viven en zonas rurales del país, donde los residentes tienen muchas más probabilidades de quedarse en el lugar donde en su lugar en vez de reubicarse. ¿Qué están diciendo aquí? Las personas que viven en zonas urbanas más densas quieren salir y decir, está bien, queremos vivir en un área menos densa. Tal vez hay cosas que son importantes para ellos si viven en un condominio o en un edificio alto.
So maybe there are things that are important to them if you're living in a condo or in a high rise and they say, I want a backyard. I want more space. I want something like that. We are seeing that reflective in the surveys that are coming back. As a matter of fact, buyers are showing a greater desire for those non-urban properties, and the rural areas are leading the way as we compare to the suburban and urban. You see here is the study that 16% growth year over year increase in views of the properties in the rural areas versus suburban and urban areas. So definitely people are definitely moving because of the fear of the pandemic. They're moving from the dense area to the, that open areas. Definitely that indication is over here.
Los compradores muestran un mayor deseo por propiedades no urbanas. Tal vez hay cosas que son importantes para ellos si viven en un condominio, en un edificio alto y dicen, quiero un patio trasero, quiero más espacio, quiero algo así. Estamos viendo eso en las encuestas que están regresando. De hecho, los compradores muestran un mayor deseo por estas propiedades no urbanas y las áreas rurales que están liderando el camino en comparación con las áreas suburbanas y urbanas. En este estudio se ve un crecimiento anual del 16% en las vistas de propiedades en áreas rurales versus áreas urbanas y suburbanas. Se está produciendo ese cambio de esto ahora es importante para nosotros cuando buscamos un nuevo hogar.
So, dear audience, so that was the report we have in short. And what we see from that report is that definitely we have a fear for the pandemic, but whoever is thinking for buying or selling, there is two things we need to discuss over here. One is, as a buyer point of view, the interest rate is historically low, and with this low interest, buyers very excited to get the mortgage right now, and that was quite comfortable. And from the seller point of view, we are thinking, okay, let's hold on a moment. But you see the figure, that figure completely showing that housing market, house price is still on the high end, and you can get the maximum equity out from your house if you decided to sell in the future. Is better do it now. So thank you for watching, and whoever is watching, we have the buyers and seller guide. And from this buyers and seller guide, we have in English and Spanish. If you like to get the free copy of the buyers and seller guide, just put your email on the chat box, and we like to send you the free copy of it. And also we have in Spanish. Cynthia?
Dos cosas que queremos mencionar que son importantes es para los vendedores, casi no hay demanda. Entonces, como les mencionábamos, la casa que va saliendo, casa que se va vendiendo. Y para los compradores, los intereses son los más bajos que se han visto en todo el tiempo. Entonces, para los dos hay unas ventajas. Y también queremos mencionarles acerca de las guías para los compradores y vendedores de este verano. Están en español y en inglés y son completamente gratis y las pueden descargar en nuestros respectivos websites.
So that was for today. If you want to reach out to us for any more question or information, you can reach me at 631-214-6627. Also, you can text me Deloar to 85377 DELOAR. Also, in the scroll, you can see our text code and Cynthia text code. And Cynthia?
Si les gustaría contactarme, soy bilingüe, hablo español, hablo inglés y mi número es 516-532-5277 o pueden textear Cynthia SHINTIA al 85377 para más información.
Thank you so much, dear audience, for watching the July market report. We'll see you again in August market report. And until now, bye-bye from Deloar Khan.
Thank you.
Thank you.